Masters is Australia's biggest Middle-earth strategy battle game tournament. With 77 players from all across the country, let's have a look at the top 10 lists to see what armies are the strongest in Australia. Masters was a 700-point tournament, and I did play in it myself. So let's get into it. A couple weeks ago, I had a look at the winning armies from Articon, the world's biggest tournament held over in the UK. And it was really interesting seeing these army lists that won over there. So it's going to be good to compare the army lists from Australia to the army lists in the UK and see if our playstyles are the same or if they're different. Let's jump straight into it with 10th place. We've got James, who's playing the Misty Mountains, Shire, and Wanderers of the Wild. He's got Guahia as his leader, Tom Bombadil, Merry, Lobelia, Baldo Tolpenny, Holford Bracegirdle, and Will Whitfoot as his heroes, and his troops are basically just as many hobbits as he can fit in. This puts him in a really high model count in the 50s. Guahia and Tom Bombadil are the main event of this army list. Guahia is a giant eagle with 12-inch fly and monstrous charge. He also has Fight 8 and 3 points of might. So when he charges in, he's got good odds of killing just about anything. But Tom Bombadil is 160 points, and ultimately, he's just an upgrade for Guahia in this list. Tom Bombadil has Refreshing Song, which has a 3-inch range. Refreshing Song restores a point of might, will, fate, and wounds lost earlier in the battle. That's one of all of them, so it is incredibly powerful. That means that in this list, Guahia is able to spend a point of might every single turn that Tom Bombadil is able to just refresh. Tom Bombadil also has the ability to shut down enemy heroes because if he charges, he automatically wins the fight. Now, he can't do any damage with that auto win, but it means that a hero like Gilgalad can just be bouncing off him every single turn. It's really, really powerful. Now, I did actually play against James, and I'm happy to say that I did manage to win that game, but it was terrifying. There were several turns where I had Guahia completely surrounded by all of my soldiers trying to kill him, but with Tom Bombadil there refreshing a point of fate and a wound, it was absolutely impossible, and eventually I just gave up on killing Guahia and targeted the hobbits. Now, I think that is how you beat an army list like this. Because the hobbits are so easy to kill and so slow, if you target them, you might be able to break this army and end the game before Guahia can do too much damage. Overall, I'm not surprised to see this one doing really, really well at a tournament. Now, in 9th place, we have Andrew playing Mordor and Serpent Horde. He's got the Witch King on horse with the Morgul Blade 313-2, Suladan, Gorbag, and the Mouth of Sauron as his heroes. He's got a variety of Black Numenorians and Morannon Orcs with Spear and Shield, as well as some trackers. With Suladan, he just has 2 Serpent Riders. Now, this is just a super solid, well-rounded list. Suladan is a 90.6-inch banner, which made him the most popular hero at the tournament. This is no surprise, he is at the best of a lot of people's best hero lists. This army is strong because the Witch King has Harbinger of Evil, which gives all enemy models within 12 inches -1 courage. And then Andrew's front line is all Black Numenorians who cause terror. If you want to charge a terrifying model, you have to pass a courage check. If you have -1 courage, that gets a little bit more difficult. That should give Andrew a lot of control over the movement phase. With the 6-inch banner and Fight 4 on the Black Numenorians, he should also be winning a lot of the fights. And with the Strength 4 Morannon Orcs behind the Black Numenorians, he should be able to kill his enemy wherever he does win those fights. The Witch King has fantastic magical ability, meaning that he can shut down enemy big heroes or draw them forwards to be able to be assassinated. I really like Andrew's pick of Gorbag and the Mouth of Sauron. Gorbag is such a good value hero. He starts out with a relatively normal stat line of 2 attacks and Fight 4, but if he's in a fight where he's outnumbered, he gets an extra attack and fight. That means if Gorbag charges into 2 enemy models, all of a sudden he's a 3-attack Fight 5 hero, and I'm pretty sure that makes him the cheapest 3-attack Fight 5 hero in the game. He also comes in with 3 might, which is just always good to have, and it means that in Andrew's army he has 11 might total. The Mouth of Sauron is also a great inclusion because he's very similar to a Black Numenorian Marshal, he just has some extra magical spells. That means that if the Witch King is trying to target a big hero and the big hero manages to resist it, then the Mouth of Sauron can just follow up some more magic to make sure that big hero is shut down. It's also got decent numbers, and I think that the 12 Orc Trackers is a really interesting inclusion. They're only defense 3 with a shoot of 4 up, so they're not doing a lot and they're pretty easy to kill, but I think Andrew probably decided that having that much shooting was going to be worth it because it meant that a lot of the time his opponent is going to have to come to him. Andrew is also an incredibly good player at this game. He's won countless tournaments, so no surprise to see him doing well here.
I'm just going to quickly interrupt to tell you about Conquest Creations' newest Kickstarter. This is Battlezone Mars. Now, it's a departure from our regular fantasy theme. We've gone into science fiction. So if you play other sci-fi games like Warhammer 40,000, please check out this Kickstarter. By backing this, it's the best way to support the channel and ensure that we keep making awesome content like this. Alright, let's get back to the video.
In 8th place, we have Matt playing Azog's Hunters. Now, this is Matt from the Green Dragon, and he's got a pretty cool army list. It's Azog on the White Warg, Bolg, and Fimble. Talk about an absolutely stacked hero lineup, and then he basically just has as many Hunter Orcs as he can fit in there. Now, a lot of people say that if you take Azog and Bolg, you have too many points invested into heroes, and you won't be able to get enough of the rest of the army, but obviously this one really worked for Matt. Let's have a look at each of those hero picks. Azog is just amazing. He's got 3 might, but he's riding the White Warg that also has 3 might, so effectively a 6 might hero. He wounds enemy heroes on a 3-up, and he has 3 attacks and fights 7, so he's absolutely brutal. The next choice is Bolg. Kinda similar to Azog, he only has 3 might, fight 7, strength 5, and burly, so he's wounding almost everything on 4s and some things even on 3s, so he is fantastic at killing. Now his Warg is also on an oval base, so he's able to charge 3 models at a time. Bolg has a special rule where for each model he kills, he needs to keep track of it. Once he kills a certain number of models, he gets certain bonuses. I really would have loved to have talked to Matt to see if he ever got 10 kills with Bolg, because that enables him to get Mighty Hero, which gives him a free point of might every single turn. And the final hero here is Fimble the Hunter. Now Fimble comes in at I think 60 points, and he's fight 5 with 2 attacks, and he can move through all terrain, which means he's always able to attack those enemies. And he's just a super cheap 3 might hero. Now Matt doesn't have very high numbers with this list, especially because Hunter Orcs are only defense 4, so they're quite easy to kill, so I'm guessing that he really leaned on his heroes to try to get as much of the damage done as possible. An interesting thing that people might be thinking about this list is why would you take Azog and Bolg from the Azog's Hunters list? If you'd taken Azog from Azog's Legion army list, then he could have gotten Master of Battle for free and been a green ally. But he wouldn't have been able to take Hunter Orcs, so he would have had to take some Gundabads. Now, I'm sure there's a big debate over whether or not that would be worth it, and I think a lot of people would say it would be, but obviously, Matt didn't need it. Alright, let's jump into 7th place. Now, 7th place actually goes to, hey, Jacob Lucas, that's me. And I was playing the Fellowship allied with Minas Tirith. Now, the theme of my army was the departure of Boromir. I wanted to represent the moment where Boromir is leaving Minas Tirith and heading for Rivendell to go and join the Council of Elrond and the Fellowship. So my army is Boromir of Gondor, so that's the Fellowship Boromir, on a horse with shield. And then we've got Faramir, who's actually my leader, because Faramir and Boromir are both heroes of valor. I could choose which one, and Faramir is the leader. Now, the thematic reason for that is because Boromir is leaving, and he's left Faramir in charge. But it was also a tactical reason. Faramir is a lot more survivable because he's defense 7. Now, Faramir has heavy armor and a shield. A ton of people were asking me, why isn't he on horse with a lance? And I'm really, really glad he wasn't. Horse with lance is the typical choice for Faramir because it means that he can hit a lot harder. But I didn't actually feel like I wanted that hitting power on Faramir. And because he was my leader, I wanted to keep him safe as possible. So by putting him on foot and hiding him in my lines, he was going to be a lot more survivable. In his warband, he has 15 Osgiliath veterans, or I think it's 14 Osgiliath veterans and a Warrior of Minas Tirith with a banner. Now, a lot of people I see online all the time saying that Osgiliath veterans aren't a good choice. You should only pick them if you're playing thematically. And I disagree. I think I did pretty well with them. Basically, they're similar to a regular Warrior of Minas Tirith, but they lose the Shield Wall ability. They gain +1 courage, and if they're within 6 inches of Faramir or Boromir, they gain +1 fight. So effectively, they were a fight 4, courage 4 battle line. I really, really like these guys, and they performed really well. Now, my next hero is Kyrian, Lieutenant of Amon Barad. This guy's a Games Workshop creation, and he's a regular-ish Minas Tirith captain with 3 might and the ability to call a heroic strike. He also has a special rule called Boldest of the Bold, where against terrifying enemies, he gets +2 courage to charge, and against enemies with Blades of the Dead, he gets +2 courage for his defense. Now, that was not a rule that I thought too much about before I was running this at the tournament, but it really came in clutch. I played against 2 all-terror armies, or 3 all-terror armies actually, and having that ability really helped. It just meant he could consistently get into the fights. Now with him, he has a bunch of Citadel Guard, who all get bodyguards, they were always staying around. He's got some Citadel Guard archers who have strength 3 bows, which I really like, and 1 Citadel Guard archer on horse, who has bodyguard and is really mobile, so he was great for going and threatening objectives. My next warband is the Knight of the White Tower with 6 Fountain Court Guards with shields. The Fountain Court Guards with shields are fight 4, bodyguard, defense 7. All around, that is fantastic. And the Knight of the White Tower isn't a lot of people's first pick for heroes in Minas Tirith. He has a 2-handed weapon which gives him -1 on the dual row, but if he gets a 6, it stays as a 6. And then this sword causes 2 wounds instead of 1. So he has big hero threat potential. I had one game where he killed both Gorbag and Suladan using that ability, so he is absolutely fantastic. Now my final warband is Damrod, the Ranger of Ithilien, and he's leading 3 Osgiliath veterans with bow and another Citadel Guard archer on horse. So that's another move 10 bodyguard model to go and get objectives. Damrod is a very generic-ish ranger. He's 25 points with 1 might, 1 will, 1 fate. So he is basically just a 1-drop with some extra might in the army. All up, my army has 15 might points, which was more than all of my opponents. And because of that, I was able to control the battlefield a lot. I had 4 wins and 1 loss with this army at this tournament, and you'll see the army that I lost to ended up coming in second. So we'll see that one when we get there. This army was also entirely made out of metal models and was a ton of fun to play. In 6th place, we have Guy, who's playing Moria. Now, I believe Guy came across from New Zealand. His leader is a Moria Goblin Captain with shield. He's got Groblog, a Moria Shaman, and then a Cave Drake and a Watcher in the water. There's a ton of stuff to break down here, but let's start with that Moria Goblin Captain with shield being the leader. Groblog would have definitely been the thematic leader, but he does have a choice between the Captain and Groblog because they're both Fortitude, and I do think the Captain is absolutely the better option. Groblog has extra might and strike, so he probably wants to be getting stuck into the fight, and also because of his Mithril Crown ability where he gives extra fight to the warriors around him, that he is probably more of a target already. So instead of making him even more of a target, it does make sense to spread that out. Now, I do think that Pure Moria is just one of the most powerful lists in the game. I've played it a ton, and I really love it. Guys included a Bat Swarm in here. The Bat Swarm is 12-inch move because it's flying around, and it halves the fight value of any enemy models it's fighting, so it's great for hunting big heroes. He's also got a Wild Marauder, which is a cavalry model with a bunch of attacks, so that's great for going and getting objectives. With those 2 models, he has his mobility covered. Now, we need to get into the big one, which is the Watcher in the water. For those of you who have played 40k, the Watcher in the water basically has the deep strike ability, which means it can almost teleport onto the battlefield. And then its tentacles allow it to drag enemy heroes into base contact with it. So it is the ultimate hero assassin tool in all of Middle-earth. Once you pair that with the Bat Swarm, it's also almost unbeatable. If you take a big hero like Gilgalad, who's fight 9, and you drag him away from his army with the Watcher in the water, and then you charge him with the Bat Swarm, no matter what, the Watcher in the water will have a higher fight value and should be able to rip him to pieces. The Watcher in the water is a super strong unit, but is also very killable. And the other choice to talk about is the Cave Drake. The Cave Drake have a super big base and a bunch of wounds and can hit really hard. At 175 points, a lot of people are a big fan of them. Now, personally, I didn't think they were that good, but then I saw a guy coming in 6th place in Australia's biggest tournament with it, so I think he proved me wrong. I didn't have the opportunity to play against him, but I would have loved to have played against a Kiwi, and this is a great list. Let's move into 5th place, which goes to Tyler. Tyler is another fellow Victorian. I played some practice matches against him, and he obliterated me in those practice matches. He's got Elendil, Círdan, and Gilgalad with some Numenorians, and some Rivendell warriors who have the King's Guard upgrade, which means he has fight 6 troops. Now, Tyler really just maxed out by getting 2 of the beefiest heroes in Middle-earth on his army. Elendil has fight 7, strength 5, and a free heroic combat every single turn. Whereas Gilgalad gets fight 9, 3 attacks base, but he has Lord of the West, so he can reroll a dice to win the fight and to wound. So it's like a pseudo 4 attacks, and he also has a built-in +1 to wound. Seriously, these two guys are two of the biggest heroes in the game, and Kyodan can help make them even stronger by giving them enchanted blades, which gives them re-roll all wounds. Kyodan also supports the army with blinding light, so it's harder to shoot them. He can make everyone in the army cause terror, and everyone in the army auto-pass courage checks. So this isn't a very high model count army, but it is maxed out in terms of hitting power. I know that Tyler had a game against a Smaug, who is one of the strongest models in terms of single model strength. He's 700 points. And Tyler was able to win that game in about 15 minutes because he just went in and did all 20 wounds to Smaug. So congrats to Tyler. He did obliterate me in the practice matches, so I'm glad that he's come in above me. And let's go on to fourth place. Fourth place was achieved by Riley, who's playing Tom Bombadil, Saruman, Galadriel, Boromir, Dwalin, and Bomba. Now this used an exploit in Tom Bombadil's rule that said that enemy models can't get within 1 inch, but I think in the future, TOs would rule this one differently, so I wouldn't have a shot at this list personally, because I don't think it'll be viable in the future. In third place, we had Jack, who's playing the Desolator of the North. That's right, he only had one model, and that was Smaug. Very, very impressive to be able to come third place with Smaug at such a big tournament. Now, I believe Jack's scoreline was 4 wins and 1 draw. He would have got that draw in some of the objective scenarios. Smaug is obviously an absolute monster, and a lot of the lists just don't have the ability to kill him. But he's the kind of model that you never expect to see this high up in a tournament, because usually as a single model, he loses those objective scenarios. Jack is an expert with Smaug to be able to have gotten to this point, and he used his barge, brutal power attacks, and fire breath to be able to kill enemy models on the objectives at the last turn of the game. So well played to Jack. Smaug is super, super cool. I haven't ever got a chance to play against Smaug, and I kind of wanted to in this tournament, but at the end of the day, I'm happy I didn't, because I think I would have gotten absolutely obliterated. Before we jump into our top 2 lists, let's have a quick observation about what the difference between these army lists are and the army list from Articon. Firstly, a lot of these ones are way lower model count. A lot of the Articon armies were up in the 50s or high 40s and 50s. My one was 38 models. 10th place, which was James, was a ton of models. I think it was 59 models. But in general, the average is a lot lower. Obviously, having a Smaug in there really hurts the average, but Smaug only having 1 model, 4th place only having 6 or 7 models, really makes a huge difference. So it's just interesting that here in Australia, we're obviously not using as many models as they do overseas. Let's jump into second place, and that was played by Andreas. Now, this is the army that I lost to. It's Fangorn and the White Council. We've got Saruman the White on horse, Treebeard with Squarey and Squippin, which is Merry and Pippin, but it wasn't thematic that they were Merry and Pippin. So there were 2 squirrels, because Saruman was still a good guy at this point, and then Quickbeam and Beachbone. Now, when I first saw this army list, I thought it was just a bit of a meme, a bit of a themey play that wasn't really going to do much. But once I started to understand what it actually does, I completely understand how it got to second place. So, Saruman is the linchpin in here. Those 3 Ents are absolute tanks with 3 wounds, defense 8, and a fate point. Treebeard with 3 fate points. They are really difficult to take down. And Saruman has Sorcerer's Blast. That means that if a model is Sorcerer's Blasted and it hits any of the models in combat with any of the Ents, all of the models in that combat are knocked prone. So that means that if you charge Treebeard with 10 guys and Saruman Sorcerer's Blast one of them, all of your guys are knocked prone, and then Treebeard can absolutely rip them to shreds. So that's the first massive trick that it has. The second massive trick is basically the same thing, but it's if the Ents hurl into the other Ents combat, it, again, knocks everything prone using the hurl rules. So that makes it really, really difficult to actually put hits on this army without being super careful and spreading out as much as you can. Saruman, of course, has his regular magic like Compel and Transfix, which can shut down big heroes that would go in and try to kill an Ent in 1 turn. Another big trick that this army has is this is actually a 6 model army. It looks like 4 and only 4 models deploy on the table, but because Treebeard has Merry and Pippin, he counts as 3. So the only way you can break this army is if you kill Treebeard, Merry and Pippin, and then 1 other model, which makes it almost impossible to break it. I played against this army in Retrieval, which was basically capture the flag, and I managed to pick up the flag and almost run away with it, but ultimately this army still has 12 points of might, which is an absolute ton, so it has a lot of resources. This army would have struggled the most in an objective scenario, but because Treebeard counts as 3, and you've got control with the barge and with the compel from Saruman, you can push enemy models off those objectives, and you probably will have killed most of them by the time the game is going to end. Congratulations to Andreas for coming second with this army, and I absolutely cannot wait to make a similar army that's basically the Witch King on Felbeast and then Troll Chieftains, very much inspired by Andreas's, and hopefully you'll see that one on the channel in the not too distant future. All right, let's get into first place. What army is the best in Australia? Let's have a look, and it is Kylie playing the Bjornings. Before I talk about Kylie's army, I have to say Kylie has just traveled the world. Masters was the final stop on a journey where she went from Australia to the UK to play in Articon, where she won the Invitational International Masters, and then to Nova Open, the biggest tournament in the US, and won that one. And then to New Zealand, where she won the New Zealand League final, maybe a big New Zealand tournament she won, might not have been that one specifically. And then she came to Masters, where she won Masters. This is easily the most impressive 6 weeks of Middle-earth strategy battle gaming in the history of the world. I think she was saying in the 6 weeks she played 56 games, with 40 of those being tournaments. She played a couple other small tournaments throughout there, and I don't think anyone's won this amount of games in this short a period of time. Let's have a look at her winning list, which is Bjorn and Grimbjorn with a bunch of Bjornings. She has 5 great bows in there. Now, this is one of the legendary legions that came out in Defense of the North and actually got a nerf in the most recent FAQ. Bjorn and Grimbjorn used to have a 5+ save, but that got reduced to a natural 6. So why is this army list so powerful? This army is terrifying because when you fight against Bjorn and Grimbjorn, you're probably not going to be able to do that much damage to them in one turn, and they're probably going to be able to rip your biggest hero to pieces in one turn. When you pair that with both of them having hurl, because they're both monsters, they can hurl into each other's combat, which means, similar to the Ents, if you hurl a model from Bjorn's combat into Grimbjorn's combat, it knocks all of those models down. Now, it seems like it should be easy to avoid that happening, but when Bjorn calls a heroic combat and then hurls, it's really, really difficult to avoid. This model also has 15 Bjornings who come in with Fight 5 and 2 attacks, so they are no slouches at all. Those great bows are strength 4 bows, so it actually has a really, really decent shooting power, meaning the enemy is generally going to have to run towards it. Killing the Bjornings, I think, is the secret to winning against this army, because Bjorn and Grimbjorn are almost unkillable. I won't say unkillable, but almost unkillable, at least with an army like mine that lacked hitting power, almost unkillable. This has enough models to be able to go and get objectives with 17, but still a lot lower than a lot of those armies that we saw from Articon. So congratulations to Kylie, congratulations to everyone who played in Masters. It was an absolutely fantastic event, and I can't wait to make the travel up there again next year. Thank you to the organizers of the event, and please let me know your thoughts on these army lists down below. Were you expecting to see these army lists at the top of a massive tournament or not? Thank you for watching. This has been Conquest Creations.